The Honourable Member for Mount Pearl Southlands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it's a pleasure to stand in this Honourable House once again and speak to Bill 1, and I guess it'll be my last opportunity now to speak on Budget 2016. You know, Mr. Speaker, I've received, I can't tell you the number of calls, emails, messages I've received, people I've spoken to, on literally thousands, and I'm not joking when I say literally thousands. And what I'm hearing is the same message from people. It's a case of just too much, too fast. It's what's been said here many, many times in the House by all of my colleagues, and quite frankly, even members on the government side have said themselves, admittedly, that it's a tough budget, that they have concerns about the budget, that their constituents have concerns about the budget, and we all know that to be true. Now, Mr. Speaker, there have been some people who I have spoken to who have said, you know, Paul, when you get up and you have your last chance to speak on the budget, you should really beat up on the government. I don't intend on doing that, Mr. Speaker. I do not, because I know that they are doing what they believe to be the right thing. I really believe that. The Cabinet crafted the budget, and they realise we're in a tough spot, and they are doing what they think is right. And we all understand that we are in tough financial circumstances. Everybody knows that. I know it. They know it. The members on this side of the House know it. The people know it. And everybody expected, going into this budget, that there would have to be measures taken to rein in spending. Everybody knew that there would have to be changes made in some of the things that we're doing, and everybody knew that there would, without doubt, have to be revenues, additional revenues raised. And people knew and expected that there would be increases in taxes. Everybody expected that. I don't think there's a soul that didn't expect that. And I also don't believe there's a soul who's not prepared to pay their fair share. I really believe people are prepared to pay their fair share. But again, it's a matter of degrees. It comes down to a matter of degrees. There's not much point, I've heard it said, there's not much point in saving the province from bankruptcy if we're that close, and I understand that, you know, there's no doubt when it comes to our ability to borrow money that, you know, we're in a tough spot. And we had to pass a bill last night to give us the ability to borrow over $3 billion, which is the most we've ever had to borrow. So we all understand that. Totally agree. People understand that. But there's not much point in saving the province from bankruptcy, and in the same process, you're going to drive your own citizens into financial ruin. There has to be a balance. There has to be a reasonable balance, and that's all anybody is saying. And I believe, and most people believe that I've spoken to, that there could be a reasonable balance. It could be reached. That there could be some changes made to the budget that would still accomplish what government needs to accomplish, still get our expenses down, still raise additional money, because we know even with these changes we're told we're still at $1.8 billion, I believe. Although the $1.8 billion deficit that's being projected is based on $40 oil, and we know that that has increased, so, which is a good thing, by the way. That's a good thing. But we all know it's not going to be as bad as $1.8 billion. All you need to do is do the math. And assuming that oil stays up at around 50 or maybe goes up a little higher or whatever, that we're going to be in a better position than what's being predicted in the budget, and that's a good thing. But we also know that, you know, the cumulative impact of all this taxation is going to hurt a lot of people. Now, I will say, and I'll be the first one to acknowledge, that there was thought put into low-income people in this budget. The government did that. I give them full marks. They did. When it came to people on low income seniors and so on, There was measures in the budget to replace the senior supplement that was there and the home heat rebate with an enhanced seniors benefit. And there's no doubt that for those people, that's going to help them. And some of them are going to be better off. And that's a good thing. Totally agree with it. I'm sure everybody agrees with that. It's a good thing. We also know that as a result of the, I guess the deal, I'll call it, that was made with our federal government on a deferral of payments to them of some $270 million a year, I believe it is, till 2022, that has allowed us to raise the threshold on the levy to $50,000 income, up from what was, I think, $25,000. That's a good thing. I'm glad it happened. I'm sincerely glad it happened. And I really believe that a lot of it happened because of political pressure, because of the pressure being put on by the public and so on, who are outraged by all these taxes, that, you know, those communications happened and those meetings happened to say, what can you do, boys, to help us out? And I don't really care what caused it. I don't really care what the impetus was for it to happen. I'm just glad that it happened. I'm glad that it happened, and I thank Minister Foote and anybody else who had anything to do with at least providing relief at this time to help some more people, because some more people were helped, there's no doubt. But, and the but, there are still an awful lot of people in this province, an awful lot, that make more than $50,000 a year. And a lot of those people, certainly I represent, people like nurses and teachers and police officers and firemen and engineers, small business owners, and so on, and the list goes on. People working in the offshore, people who are professionals at IT, whatever the case might be. And yes, they make a decent living for themselves. But you got to realize that just because they make a decent living, they're living in an area where they're probably paying $400,000 or $500,000 for a home. Like, you can't get a house in Southlands for less than that. That's nothing fancy. That's just a normal home over there. And they probably got the husband and wife working. They got 2 cars, and they got kids in dance and piano and whatever they've got, and so on. And they're paying a lot of money in municipal taxes. And certainly I know the people in Southlands just got a big hit municipally, and that they just had to endure. And now they're going to get another huge hit because of that cumulative effect of income tax and the HST and the gas tax, 15% on insurance, and all of these fees. You combine all this together, and the levy, of course, the levy, and when you combine all this together, it's going to have a very big negative impact on some people. Like I said, in my district, who make good incomes, they'll be able to absorb it. Some will, but it's definitely going to impact their quality of life and that of their children and their family. Others in my district, who are probably making $60,000, $70,000, whatever, for those people, you know, it's going to be much tougher, and it's going to be really hard on them, and they're going to have to make real tough choices. As opposed, you know, they're going to have to make real tough choices when it comes to what they're able to do, what they're able to provide for their families. And I've heard from some people who literally have told me, like, Paul, I am literally living from paycheck to paycheck. I can barely survive now. And this is just enough to put me over the edge. I could lose my home. I could lose my home. Now, is everybody going to lose their home? No. But there are people who are on that edge. They're teetering. And this is going to be enough to just put them over the edge. And I think that that's unfair. And I don't think that's what was intended. I really believe that's not what was intended. But that's the impact that these cumulative impacts of all this taxation of fees are going to have on people. And there's a trickle-down effect on the economy. You have to think about it. And I said this yesterday, I'm no economist, first one to admit that, but it's hard to understand how 4 months ago we talked about the fact that 2% HST was going to be a job killer. That's what was said. I said it. I said it was because it was in my platform. It was in our platform. Fast forward 4 months later, we're going to do 2% HST, 15% on insurance, all the taxes and fees. We're going to jack gas up by 16.5 cents and tax on that, which is like 20 cents on gas. We're going to impose a levy, and all of a sudden that's not a job killer. Like how do you square that circle? How do you square that circle? I would love for somebody, and I look forward to when the Premier stands to speak, which I understand he will, and maybe the Minister of Finance, to explain that, because I don't understand it. I really don't. How it could be a job killer 4 months ago, 2% on HST, and all of a sudden all these combined taxes, and that's not a job killer. Doesn't make sense. And if people don't have money to spend, and you're taking away all of their expendable income, that's got to impact jobs. Sure, it's got to. Sure, who's going to go? How are people going to afford to go out for a meal at a restaurant, or go to a movie, or take their kids down to the Ice Caps game, or whatever it is they're doing? They don't have the expendable income. And if people don't go to the restaurant, they don't go to the shop, they don't go here or there, sure, the businesses are going to shut down, or they're going to have to scale back, and then they're going to lay off employees. And there's more people on unemployment until that runs out, and then maybe they're on income support or whatever the case might be. There's paychecks that's not going back into the economy. I know everybody gets that. I just don't understand why we're doing this. I don't understand why we're doing this. Mr. Chair, or Mr. Speaker, sorry, in addition to the cumulative impact of taxation, there are other things in the budget that people have concerns with. Look at the education system. And I know, I know it sounds like a broken record, but it's important. This is our last chance. I've got to say it again, because I'm hearing it from people in my district, hearing it from school councils, from teachers, from parents who have children in school. Everybody gets it. Full-day kindergarten is a good thing. The research is there, says it's a good thing for children. No one's arguing that. And we also realize that there's going to be some parents. I had one person who was he wasn't angry at me. He wasn't angry at me. But what he did say, he said, Paul, you got to realize that there's some people in your district that want full-day kindergarten to go away, or to occur this year. But he did say, I'll qualify that I am biased, because by having full-day kindergarten this year, I'm going to save on some childcare costs. So I'm going to be in some money, because now I don't have to put my kids in childcare or whatever. And he was honest enough to admit that, but there was a benefit to him. So I know there's some people, if for no other reason, I could see some benefit there in terms of money saved. But then again, if you have kids in childcare, then there's tax breaks you can get and so on. Anyway, and then do you really make these kind of critical decisions based on somebody saving a few dollars on childcare to implement a system in school that we're not ready for? And that's the question, are we even ready for it? Because I know there's schools in my district, and we're hearing from other schools, that they have concerns about space. There's not enough space available. We're talking about team teaching, jamming kids into classrooms that are just not large enough to accommodate. A lot of teachers are saying they're not ready, and so on. And then, do you do that at the expense of existing programs, whether it be intensive core French, whether it be having to resort to team teaching, multi-grading, not having the supports in place with children with special needs in the classroom? These are the things that, we're hearing there's cuts in all these areas, and there's all kinds of concerns. So, do we spend the money and resources to put into something new, like full-day kindergarten, which we've never had? Granted, it's a good thing we've never had it, but we're going to implement this at the expense of the existing system and the children in that system. doesn't make sense. We should not implement full-day kindergarten until we're ready and we're able to do it properly, and we can afford to do it properly. Then we do it. But we don't do it at the expense of the kids that are in the system now. That's not going to cost us a cent. You could make that reversal and it would cost us no money. It would cost us nothing, I would say. There's other things that we could be saving money on, things we're doing that could save money so that we wouldn't have to be imposing these levies, or we could not have to impose as much on gas taxes and so on. I've talked about a few. Others have talked about a few. You know, things like, do we really need at this point in time in our history, with all due respect to the members from Labrador, which I totally respect and I understand why you would be in support of it, but a fixed link study to Labrador at $750,000 at this time when we don't have the money, should we be doing it? $30 million in a contingency fund, and I'm not talking about the $20 million that the Minister of Municipal Affairs was talking about last night about to leverage federal money. I understand there's lots of money, but there's $20 million for that. That's a good thing. But there's $30 million contingency fund, which having a contingency fund is a good idea. I acknowledge that. People acknowledge that. Sure they do. But we've never had it. And given the fact that we are so cash-strapped now, and we're forced to tax people into oblivion, maybe that money should be going towards lessening the tax burden on people who can't afford it. So that's another area. Another area that I talked about last night was the fact that on the gas tax, we're going to be charging 15% on the new 16.5 cents. Part of that 15% is federal tax. So the federal government are going to capitalise on the backs of our austerity measures with their share of that 15%. Now, according to George Murphy, who I spoke to, as I said last night, I got him to run the numbers, and this is not an exact science, but he told me that based on last year, and people can challenge these numbers, I'm only going by what George told me, I believe him, 1.13 billion litres of gasoline sold last year, which the federal share on their share of the HST on that 16.5 cents would equate to 22.4 million. That's what he's telling me. That's what he's telling me. If someone can correct the numbers, fine. That's fine. I don't know. I'm only going by what the man told me. I'd like for it to be corrected. But they are, whatever the number is, they're getting something out of it, and that should be going back to us to help alleviate some of the tax burden. So, Madam Speaker, there's a number of things that I could speak about, but I've only got 2 minutes left. So I'm going to finish off, first of all, by saying that, and one of the big issues people have, is that what we're doing here is nowhere close to what we campaigned on. Nowhere close. We could understand times got worse and some adjustments had to be made, but the bottom line is whether the Leader of the Official Opposition wrote back and said it's not $1.2 billion, it's more like $2 billion. I think we all could have done the math and knew it was probably going to be closer to $2 billion. We didn't know it would be 2.7, but anyone knew it was closer to 2. And what we campaigned on, or the government campaigned on, was nothing close to what we're doing. Not a thing. So people feel like we were being dishonest. That's how they feel. I know nobody knowingly. I certainly didn't knock on anyone's door and try to deceive people. I could only go by what was in the Red Book at the time. That's all I could go by. That's what was there. But people feel like what we campaigned on and what we're delivering are two different things. That's how people feel. So I'll take my last minute just to appeal to the members in the government side. I appeal to the Premier, to the Finance Minister, to the Cabinet. I really do. It's still not too late. Just because I'm the last speaker here and the Premier, it's still not too late. You have the ability to make amendments if you wanted to. I'm asking you, please, go back, make some amendments. Make something that everybody can live with. And I say to the members who are not in the Cabinet, I say to you, remember who elected you. Remember what you ran on. Remember when you knocked on those doors, what you told the people. Remember that. You were elected to represent them. That's who you were there for. And I'm asking you, I'm pleading with you, if the Cabinet is not going to stand up and say they're going to make some amendments, then I am asking you to vote with your conscience, vote with your heart, vote for the people who elected you, and vote no to
Order,
this
please.
budget. Thank
Order,
you,
please.
Madam
I
Chair.
remind the honourable member's time for speaking have expired. The honourable member for Mount Pearl North on a point of order.
Madam Speaker, I'm rising on a point of privilege.